Today we're talking about operating an uninsured motor vehicle in the state of Illinois. Kind of boring, right? No. This topic is important because it affects so many people. I mean, it's easy to have your insurance lapse or switch cars and not be covered or whatever the case may be. It is pretty easy to find yourself in this situation, and it can have major consequences. It can be very expensive, and it can also cause your license to be suspended. Now, the secret is there are some things you can do if you're in this situation to help you out. And we're going to go over all of those right now. Hi, I'm attorney Derek Martin with Driver Defense Team. Our law firm operates out of Chicago in the Chicago suburbs. Probably the most common ticket we see is no insurance. Now, many people actually had insurance at the time and just couldn't find their card. That's no big deal. We'll talk about it. But also, many times people didn't actually have insurance. Whether they knew it or not in the moment is irrelevant. They didn't actually have insurance, and now they need to go to court and deal with it. That is what we're going to be talking about today. So first, the rule is that you must have a liability policy. If you're going to operate a vehicle on Illinois roads, you must have liability insurance. Now, if you're pulled over and you actually had a valid policy, you just didn't have the card or didn't have the updated card, that is no big deal. If you actually had insurance on that day, the moment that you were pulled over, not an hour later or the next day, at that moment, if you had a policy and can prove it, then your case must be dismissed. It's a requirement, actually, that you can go to court, you can show that you actually had it, and they got to dismiss this ticket. Cool, right? That's no big deal. Not much to talk about there. Now, it stinks because you got to make a trip to court and everything. In some counties, you can fill out an affidavit and provide it at the clerk's office and avoid going in front of the judge. But either way, you got to take the trip to court, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about here the situation where you didn't actually have insurance. Now, whether you knew it at the time you were driving or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is you didn't have it. So the fine, if you are convicted of this, is a minimum of $500. Up to $1,000. So at a very minimum, if you are convicted of operating a vehicle without insurance in Illinois, you're looking at $500 plus court costs. Court costs are about $225 to $250, depending on which courthouse and which county you're in. So at a minimum, you're at $725 for this. Plus, if you are convicted, you will be looking at a 3-month suspension of your license if this is your first time around. So a minimum of $500 plus court costs and a minimum of a 3-month suspension. So the question is, how do I avoid a conviction? Like, what can I do to avoid a conviction? And the answer to that is go get insurance. Even if it's after the fact, the next day, the next week, whatever, sometime between getting pulled over and going to court, go get yourself a valid insurance policy and bring that to court, or have your attorney bring that to court. And that is what we call post-compliance insurance. So post meaning afterwards you did comply. And you can provide that to the court, and oftentimes that will get the court to avoid giving you a conviction and instead giving you supervision. Supervision is a good thing because it does two things. Number one is supervision does not suspend you. Perfect. Keep driving legally, right? And now you have a valid insurance policy. The other thing it does is it reduces that minimum fine down from $500 to $100. Now, you still have to pay court costs, but it's right off the bat saving your license from being suspended and saving you $400. So supervision is definitely a win in this scenario. But you can't just get unlimited supervisions. The right lawyer in some courthouses, you can actually stretch that a little bit. And I've seen many examples where we've gotten supervision when maybe we shouldn't have. But the rule is that they will look back 5 years. So if you've already gotten supervision for operating an uninsured motor vehicle in Illinois within the last 5 years, then you are not eligible for supervision again. And that's a problem because the only alternative then is a conviction, right? You can go to trial and be found not guilty. That would be great, right? But this is where a good lawyer comes in and often can work on some things for you in order to minimize that impact. But the point here is supervision is very beneficial and much preferred over a conviction. But let's keep talking about convictions, right? Because sometimes, you get a conviction, you spend 3 months being suspended, you pay the $500 plus court costs, and then at the end of that 3-month suspension, not 3 years, end of that 3-month suspension, you have to pay an additional $100 reinstatement fee to the Secretary of State. So it can be quite expensive. But if you are suspended for not having insurance and you drive and you get caught again, now you're looking at a 6-month suspension. And a third conviction, you are looking at a $1,000 minimum fine. So you can see they escalate the suspension, they escalate the fine each time because they really, really, really want you to get insurance. Also, it is worth noting that if you are in an accident that causes bodily harm, meaning someone's hurt, then this isn't just a regular traffic ticket. Because that accident resulted in bodily harm and because you did not have insurance, this can be upgraded and charged as a Class A misdemeanor. Class A misdemeanor is a criminal offense, right? And that has bigger penalties. That can have up to a $2,500 fine. And technically, you can go to jail for that. So, if you're driving around without insurance, you never really know what's going to happen next. You never really know if you're going to be in an accident. If you are and someone is injured, not only is that just, really bad financially because there's injuries, you can be sued, your vehicle can be ruined, and you don't have insurance to cover those costs, but also you can be charged with a criminal offense. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is what's called SR22 insurance. You may be familiar with this. So first of all, what is SR22 insurance? Other states do have it. Other states maybe call it something different, but specifically what we're talking about is what is it here in Illinois? Well, it's a regular insurance policy, but has sort of an added feature to it. And you pay a little bit extra for that added feature to the insurance company. And that feature is that every single month, they will transmit information to the Illinois Secretary of State that says you do have the minimum insurance coverage. You are insured. And so that's the Secretary of State's way of saying like, here, you've been busted on this before. So we're going to make sure that you maintain insurance. And if you don't maintain that insurance, in other words, you don't have the SR22 or the insurance company sometimes makes a mistake and doesn't transmit it to the Secretary of State properly. Well, if the Secretary of State does not get that transmission and they realize, hey, this person, I don't have proof that this person has SR22 insurance, they're going to suspend your license. So they call it financial responsibility suspension. They're going to suspend your license until they get proof of that SR22 insurance. So cost you a little bit more money, not super expensive, but it's an extra sort of hoop that you need to jump through if you get caught without insurance. And so, that SR22 requirement lasts 3 years. It's a long time, right? So you're going to have to pay that extra bit and jump through those extra hoops for 3 full years. Now, what triggers the SR22 requirement? Well, it's a little strange. One is getting court supervision does trigger the 3-year SR22 requirement. So, I talked earlier about how great it was to be able to get court supervision on this as opposed to a conviction. And that is true. However, supervision will still trigger an SR22 requirement. And the strange part is that a conviction will trigger SR22 requirement only after it is your 3rd conviction. So number 1 and 2 don't require the SR22, but the 3rd one does. A little bit odd there. But that is the way that the law is written in Illinois. So the question here at the end is, if you find yourself in this situation, what can you do? Well, if you had insurance or you're going to go get the insurance and this is your first time, sure, go deal with it yourself. But for these sort of tougher cases where maybe you have a history of this, or maybe there is an accident, maybe there's an accident with injuries, it's probably better to have an attorney. Your attorney can usually, if they are an attorney that does this every day, and if they're an attorney that is in that courthouse every day working with those judges and prosecutors, there's usually, no guarantee, but usually some things that can be done, some things that can be worked out to help your situation, maybe avoid a suspension, maybe avoid those $500 and $1,000 fines, maybe even avoid that SR-22 requirement. So it may help to get a lawyer, even though you may deem this just as a simple insurance ticket. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that somebody out there can avoid a suspension or avoid these high fines just simply by watching this video. So thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of luck on your case. Thanks.